Good evening and welcome to another episode of Law and Order. As you know, currently the entire world, locally, globally, are going through a very difficult time with the ongoing pandemic and with a lot of industries, a lot of fees, a lot of avenues coming to a standstill with various restrictions for them to function. But when it comes to a law of a country, there are no restrictions in whatever pandemic. There are no substitutes to that, and there is no lockdowns to that. The laws will function as it is. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is administrative law, which has been practiced in Sri Lanka in many, many avenues. And to talk about that, I'm joined by Mr. Astika Devendra, attorney at law, who's very thorough in this field. So first of all, let me say a very good evening to you, Astika.
Good evening.
So, obviously with things currently not functioning the normal way, but as I did mention, law is something that will not be curtailed with whatever pandemic that happens. The laws will remain the same unless it's been changed by various constitutions.
Yeah.
So administrative law, which is now been, I know it's been a common thing, it's a common law that's been practiced around the country, and we also call it the public law, isn't it?
Not necessarily, Kosala. It's like this. Public law, administrative law is only a part of public law. When you take public law, it deals with the constitutional law, it deals with how the relevant organs of the government, that is the judiciary, executive and the legislature work together, and also administrative law is part of that. So, it is the larger the part of the law would be the public law, and administrative law would be part of that.
So how do you want to describe administrative law?
Come again?
How would you like to describe what administrative law is really
It's
about?
simply this. It's the body of law that regulates the organs of or the agencies of the government. The government, in the sense, mostly the organs of the executive. It starts from, let's say, the functioning of the president to the functioning of the Grama Niladhari or the Vaga Niladhari. To that extent, how those the individuals to deal with certain institutions, agencies and the officers, and also the manner in which those agencies and the institutions and the officers should manage themselves when dealing with the public and the laws and the regulations. So, that would be the broader description of what administrative law is. That is basically to say how the administration of this country should work proper. In general, how they should work properly, and in the event they fail to do so, what the remedies which are available to individuals or any other organization. That broadly saying, that would be administrative.
So you did mention about it from the Grama Niladhari to the going
His
up
Excellency the President, yeah.
Excellency the President. So so there are laws being implemented specially to various types. Is it like, say, like for the Grama Niladhari, there's a different type of law that he can administrate to a certain extent, and when you exceed that extent, is it that where you take it to the other level?
No, it's like this. Now, administrative law, as I said, it starts from the executive, the president being the highest executive of the country. So, every executive power stems from him. But that doesn't necessarily mean that His Excellency the President can make decisions which have been now delegated to the Grama Niladhari, even though the power comes from that. So, everybody has a particular role. Now, for example, let's say, I'll give you example. Since you took the Grama Niladhari as an example, let's say the Grama Niladhari, then he is answerable to the divisional secretary. But just because he is answerable to the divisional secretary, that does not necessarily mean that a particular decision, let's say a recommendation which has to be given by the Grama Niladhari, for example, let's say drawing an electricity line over a particular someone's land. So, the decision finally has to come from the divisional secretary to say, okay, I am allowing that this particular the electricity line to be drawn over this person's land. But in the process, if there is a requirement that there should be a recommendation from the Grama Niladhari, the divisional secretary can't say, okay, no, anyway, I am the authority and I have delegated this power to him, so I can do it. That's called usurpation of the powers. If that power is given to a particular person, he may be inferior in hierarchy, that power has to be exercised through him.
So, are there various types of administrative law that comes in? Like it differs from various types to types, or
No, it's like this. Uh, are you asking me in the form of different countries, or
yeah, even for different countries, does it vary? I was going to
Yeah.
come to the next question, saying that does it differ from country to country?
no,
Or-
administrative law? It's like this. Now, when you take types of countries, I think it's better if we start from there and then go down. If you take countries in the world, there are certain types of countries, certain countries which have different legal systems. Now, we are in the common law systems, that basically judge made law. Civil law system is the basically started from France and then the continental system. And there are Islamic states and there is also communist states. So these are the four basic types of countries. I am not very familiar with the communist law and the Islamic law, but the basic principles of administrative law are not that different from the civil law to the civil law countries to the common law countries. Now, since this is not for lawyers but basically the general public, if I may briefly say what a civil law country is and a common law country is. Civil law country is a country where the authorities make a law, and then, I mean, we go to the ancient times, far back in the past, you make the law and then you appoint a public authority and say this is the law, you implement it. Whereas in the common law countries like England, where what they did was they appointed nobles to govern a particular property and at the particular place, and they implemented their own laws. So what happened was there were different types of laws, and then the king finally decided, and it became judge-made law. Now, in civil law countries, the difference is, as I say, the principles would not differ to from what I gather, but the manner in which those courts function are different, because in a civil law country, the bureaucracy or the administration, they are much more serious about it, and they think that is paramount. So in those countries, the court structure, for example, France, for administrative and executive action, for administrative law, there is a different court. The highest court is a different court kept aside from the main court structure. There are also the people who are hearing, the judges are civil servants, whereas here you start from the administrative system, but you end up with the normal legal system where normal people, normal judges hear the cases. They are not civil servants, they are judges. There is something called judicial review. So the court structure is different, but the basic principles of governance, that is the things that we might be talking about later, audi alteram partem and so on and so forth, the basic principles I think does not differ much.
so when you say the principles of administrative law is what you were now referring to, is it?
Yes.
Right. So then going further on, now say for example, when you talk about administrative law, so what are the type of cases that, or a person on what grounds that he can go into administrative lawsuit or go into having a case filed in the administrative law section?
Oh, yeah, Kosal, it's like this. Now, if I may start from a different position and come to your question. Now, in administrative law starts from the appointment of a public officer to the final decision given by the Supreme Court. So, let's say a Grama Nildari or a divisional secretary or a person appointed to a government institution, that appointment is governed by public law. Administrative law. So, how the appointment is made, how applications are called, how interviews should be called, right? All those are parts of administrative law. Then once the officer comes in, now some people think that the laws are interpreted only in courts and the constitution is interpreted only in the Supreme Court. That is not so, right? Every public officer, when he is faced with a problem, for example, let's say you are aware that government lands are given for agricultural purposes, residential purposes and so on. So, there is a devolution process, in the sense how it devolves. Father dies, how it comes to the next of the family. So, in doing so, that particular officer is actually interpreting a law, right? So, the appointment of that officer is governed by administrative law. he interprets the law, then he enforces the law, right? Let's say once he enforces the law, there is a party aggrieved by that, then there is an appellate procedure. Before you come to courts, there is an appellate procedure. Most of the laws allow appellate procedures. For example, under the agrarian development law, if you are dissatisfied with a decision given by agrarian tribunal, then there is an appeal process to the board of review, right? Sometimes it might not be a board of review, but sometimes it could be to another officer, right? For example, if you are dissatisfied in the decision to say terminate your services, you are a public officer, you might appeal to the secretary to that ministry, then going to the public service commission and so on. So all this comes under administrative law. So
these are steps that have been taken before taking it into the
to courts,
to courts.
yeah. Of course. So when you come to courts, of course, then even after that. So I think basically every decision taken by an administrative authority has some process. There is before actually coming to an appeal process, there need to be a proper hearing given. For example, anything you do. So I spoke about under the land development ordinance, devolution of property. If a grantee has passed away, what happens? So the divisional secretary can't just go and say, okay, I see the eldest son here, so I'm going to give. No, he must give a hearing to everybody who's concerned. If there is even a squatter in that property, he must be given a hearing. If there are other siblings, they must be given a hearing. So that is embodied in the law, and that is also embodied in the administrative principles, right? Then you may have an appeal, you may not. In other situations, for example, in respect of a public officer, now I think most of the countries are aware now, after the 13th Amendment, the public sector is basically twofolds. You have the people who are working for the state, and there are people who are working for the provincial governments. In respect of an order, now this administrative law principle, that is why I'm trying to say, Kosala, it's a very vast area. It's very difficult to pinpoint, segregate this thing. So let's say a public officer is dissatisfied with an order, disciplinary order given to him. I'll give it in two stages. A provincial public servant is dissatisfied. He is told by his superior that you are terminated. Then you have an appeal to the minister, line minister, secretary. Dissatisfied to the governor. Dissatisfied the provincial public service commission, then to the governor, so on and so forth. State, the central government officer. Dissatisfied to the public service commission, then to the administrative appeals tribunal, then only you can think about going to court. So you have to think about courts only after these stages are concluded.
So for example, if you take now, a common thing that we see in Sri Lanka is land dispute cases where you find the boundary walls and the division. So when it comes to that, are there any steps connected to administrative law before taking it into the court?
Land disputes, of course, no. Land disputes are considered a private law. It's a demarcation of boundary or reivindicative. It's part of private law, unless. But I think you're coming from the really creative mindset. That is, for example, let's say the local authority. They have certain authoritative powers that they have to exercise. For example, if your next door neighbor is building, now we heard about what happened in Kandy, where a lady lawyer and her family passed away because of a collapsing of a building. Now there is a public duty on the Pradesh Sabha or the urban council or the municipal council to ensure that the buildings are in proper order and they are constructed in the proper way so that it doesn't harm the neighbors. So in that sort of a situation, then it attracts public law principles and administrative law and administrative law principles. But if it's a simple boundary between you and me, boundary dispute between you and me, of course, public law, private, the administrative law doesn't apply.
So now you're telling me that you can take it after this process, you take it to court. So
Yes.
What is the steps what need to be taken to take it into court?
Yeah. Now, first thing that now me as a practitioner of administrative law, what I see is that most of the litigants, by the time they come to us, right, they have not followed the proper procedure, they have not acted promptly, they have been misguided, and they have gone on wrong advice, right? Because you see, first thing, so for example, I said that our administrative law principles are such that you need to be given a proper hearing. So actually, most of the situations in Sri Lanka, unless there is some issue which cannot be fathomed by us, this hearing is given. Now, you are told to come, right? I am going to have an inquiry. The division secretary says come, and people don't go. They protest at the outset and say, no, I am not letting anyone in. So the divisional secretary says, I have asked you to come. So they make a recommendation. So that cannot do. You must always comply and complain. And if you, let's say that from that decision, if you have a appeal, you act promptly. You are given a time frame. You act promptly. You should guide. You know what you should know what you want, and you should act accordingly. And the other thing that Sri Lankan people do, which is very pathetic and also hilarious in a way, is that once you get a decision, you now administrative principle. I will come to that when we speak about courts and administrative courts. It's not an appeal. It is something called judicial review. That is where you are not going to go into the merits of the case. You see the procedural aspects of it. So what people do is, when they don't get a decision, for example, what Sri Lankan people are used to do, you would have seen this. First thing that they do is they write to the president, right? They write to the president, they write to the prime minister, they write to the secretary defense, and so on and so forth. They keep writing letters. That won't help them. That can't help them. You can't write to the president against an order made by the divisional secretary, right? So there is a process. So first thing that people must do is that they must act promptly. They must advise themselves properly, and they must then, failing which, they must go to an attorney, not trying to be your own attorney, because this needs certain skills and knowledge. Go to an attorney and then decide what your next course of action is.
So when it comes to administrative law cases, like, say, is there any particular type of lawyers attorneys who are specialized in this, and what are the courts that hear these type of cases?
Yeah. Now, initially, before the provincial high courts came into operation, as I said, Kosala, now we don't have once you finish the administrative the process, may it be at the divisional secretary level, may it be at the public service commission level, may it be at the administrative appeals tribunal level, that is also all integrated into this administration process, where the administrator of the country makes decisions and they give you a chance to appeal against their own decisions, and they try to resolve the problem. Now, so you have about 2-3 stages, right, to remedy your grievance, failing which the courts are not going to sit in appeal. Like in the civil law system, they are not going to sit in appeal, because the specialists in this field are the people who have now decided that this decision, whatever that have been taken by the administration is correct. So then you have to go to court. If you are still feeling aggrieved.
So for example, you would say, okay, the administrators have given a decision, okay, for example, if it's a termination of an employer from a certain institute or a certain government institute, okay, you're being terminated, but then for example, if it's me, I'm not satisfied with that, so that's where I take it to bring in appeal, is it?
Yes. So it's a government servant terminated, you appeal to the secretary of that ministry, he turns down your appeal. you go to the Public Service Commission. I'm talking in the Sri Lankan context. You go to the Public Service Commission, they turn down your appeal. Then you go to the Public Service Commission. Sorry, I said the Public Service Commission, they turn down your appeal. Then you go to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, which was specially put in place for this. There are retired judges who are sitting there mostly. They also turn down your appeal. Then only, now you have passed about 2-3 appeal stages, and then the renowned people who have the skills in the administration of a country has now decided. Then only you move into the realm of the court. So the courts, the question I think you asked was, what are the courts? So what I was coming at is, before the 13th Amendment, the judicial review process, the process is not an appeal, but a process which sees whether the proper procedure had been followed in arriving at this decision. Now, what is different from appeals and judicial review? I think it's important in not only in administrative law, but in if you were to talk about civil law or criminal law, there is a difference. That difference is, appeal is, let's say that I am an inferior court judge, you are a superior court judge. I hear a case, I give a decision, I have options X, Y, Z. I give the decision as X. You are the superior court judge. You will put yourself in my shoes and you will say, okay, if I was sitting there, I would have given the decision as Y, not X. So you can substitute your decision to mine, right? But judicial review is not that. Why? These people, now the judges who are hearing this, as in the civil law system, is not superior people to these people who have made this decision. So what they do is only see, okay, what are the procedures that you have to follow? Before the divisional secretary made this order, he had to give hearing to the siblings. Had he done it? If he done it, okay, take, fine. Then appeal. Has this person been given a right of appeal? Was he told like within 14 days you can appeal to so and so? No, they have not done it. So the judge is looking at that, the procedural aspect of it, and says, okay, here you have come to the decision, that might be the right decision, but there is a procedure which had to be followed, you had not followed that, and that is why we are giving this decision. That is judicial review, right? So judicial review is now done in 3 courts. Court of Appeal was the initial court, and there are certain judicial reviews in the form of administrative law comes in the form of writs. We call them writ applications. So Court of Appeal mainly. Then there are certain writs. For example, cases, if you are to file a writ application against the Elections Commission, then it has to be before the Supreme Court, and also under the 13th Amendment, there are certain rights which have been given to the provincial high courts, as long as the decision had been taken in that particular province, and also the decision is in respect of a subject which is in the provincial council list. So these are the 3 courts.
3 courts. So now, for example, you said now there is a judicial hearing that they do before taking it into a consider of a court. So in that case, when it's taken up in these courts, is now, for example, if I was the person appealing against the decisions given, so I will be represented by an attorney. So will the other party also be represented by an attorney itself, or will they be just taken into consideration for the decisions that they will give?
Are you referring to courts or in
courts? Yeah.
Of course, you have to name those parties as respondents in this case. Any party who in a writ application who has a say in it. In a writ application, the party aggrieved would be the petitioner. The party who made the decision, the government, state authority will be a respondent, and also there might be an aggrieved party. So let's say the dispute between 2 siblings, you and me. Then that party will also be a respondent and referenced by Ratinet law.
I think you really have made it very clear that administrative law is a very vast area and a very detailed area that we could talk about, but unfortunately that time has caught up on today's episode of Law and Order to discuss further about administrative law. So let me first of all thank you very much for joining us on this program. We'll have more discussion about administrative law, because there is a very important part maybe in the next episode that I would like. Can a person challenge the state in the law, in administrative law? That is going to be very important for us to find out. So we will definitely be with you on our next episode of Law and Order to talk about that aspect. So till then, it's good night.